estimated that about 2 billion people worldwide are infected with Mycobacterium tuberculosis, often just shortened to tuberculosis or simply TB. 2 billion is a ton of people, but even though they are infected, but doesn't mean all those people who have symptoms, the vast majority, about 90 to 95%, are not even aware they are infected. And this is because usually the immune system can contain it such that it is not able to multiply and often remains latent or dominant as opposed to active, which usually causes symptoms and can be spread to others. If the host's immune system becomes debilitated at some point down the road, like with AIDS or some other illness, or as a person grows older, it can be allowed to reactivate or basically wake up and become very serious, especially if it spreads through the body. Mycobacteria are an interesting bunch. They are slender, rod-shaped, and need oxygen to survive. In other words, they are strict aerobes. They have got an unusual waxy cell wall, which is mainly as a result of the production of mycolic acid. Because of this waxy cell wall, they are acid-fast, meaning that it can hold onto a dye in spite of being exposed to alcohol, leaving it bright red colored when a Ziehl-Neelsen stain is used. The wall also makes them incredibly hard and allows them to resist weak disinfectants and survive on dry surfaces for months at a time. Now, Mycobacterium tuberculosis is usually transmitted via inhalation, which is how they gain entry into the lungs. Now we breathe in all sorts of virus and bacteria all the time, but we have got defenses that take care of most of them. For one, air that we breathe in it's turbulent in the upper airways and drive most bacteria. For one, against mucus, which is then cleared pretty. Ultimately, though TB can avoid the mucus traps and makes its way to the deep airways and alveoli, where we have macrophages which eat up foreign cells, digest and destroy them. With TB, they recognize foreign proteins on their cell surfaces and phagocytize them, or essentially package them into a space called a phagosome. With most cases, the macrophage then fuses the phagosomes with the lysosomes, which has hydrolytic enzymes that can pretty much break down any biochemical molecule. TB is tricky though, and once inside the macrophage, they produce a protein that inhibits this fusion, which allows the mycobacterium to survive. It doesn't just survive though, it percolates and creates a localized infection. At this point, somebody has developed primary tuberculosis, which means that they have signs of infection soon after being exposed to TB. Even though it sounds bad, most people at this stage are actually asymptomatic or maybe have a mild flu-like illness. About 3 weeks after initial infection, cell-mediated immunity kicks in and immune cells surround the site of the TB infection, creating a granuloma, essentially an attempt to wall off the bacteria and prevent it from spreading. The tissue inside the middle dies as a result, a process referred to as a caseous necrosis, which means cheese-like necrosis since the dead tissue is soft, white, and looks a bite like cheese. This area is known as a gone focus. TB also gets to healer lymph nodes, either carried over by immune cells through the lymph or by direct extension of the gone focus infection, and causes caseation there are well, and together these causating tissues and associated lymph node make up the characteristic gone complex. Gone complexes are usually subpleural and occur in the lower lobes of the lungs. The tissue that's encapsulated by the granuloma undergoes fibrosis and often calcification, producing scarce tissues that can be seen on X-rays. This calcified gone lymph is called a Ranke complex. In some cases, although a scar is left over, the mycobacterium is killed off by the immune system, and that's the end of that. In other cases, even though they were walled off, they remain viable and are therefore still alive, but they are just dormant. If and when a person's immune system becomes compressed, like with AIDS or with aging, then gone focus can become reactivated and the infection can spread to either one or both upper lobes of the lungs. It's thought that this is because oxygenation is greatest in these areas, and TB being an aerobe prefers areas of greater oxygenation. Since they were previously exposed, the immune system's memory T cells quickly release cytokines to try and control the new outbreak, which forms more areas of caseous necrosis. This time, though, it ends to cavitate or form cavities, which can allow the bacteria to disseminate or spread through the airways and lymphatic channels to other parts of the lungs, which can cause bronchopneumonia, but it can also spread via the vascular system, and in fact almost every other tissue in the body, called systematic biliary TB. When TB spreads to other tissues, it causes complications related to the organ affected. Kidneys are commonly affected, resulting in sterile pyuria or high levels of white blood cells in the urine. It might also spread to the meninges of the brain, causes meningitis, the lumbar vertebrae. causing pot disease, the adrenal glands causing Addison's disease, the liver causing hepatitis, and the cervical lymph nodes causing lymph adenitis in the neck, also known as sacropula.